As you look at the foundation of this home, it is a poured concrete foundation found typically in your higher level construction. The first test I had to meet when we went to Dade County, Broward County, and Ford was there was 3 tests for a panel. You came, they saw you produce a panel, they stamped it. We put it on a trailer and went to Florida. And we were making these panels in northern Georgia at the time. Right. They take that panel, they stand it up, they connect it by all 4 points, and then they arbitrarily pick a point on it, and they fire 10-foot long 2x4s out of an pneumatic cannon. Right. And typically it's done where they test for bird ingestion in turbine jet engines. But they do this also with a shutdown area where they want to test how far a missile will go through your building. And that's usually the cause of death or the building collapsing on the person inside. Right. Regardless of fenestration, that doesn't count. Because windows in those days couldn't stop anything, but now they have hurricane ready glazing, right, which is mandatory in the South. But when they fired the 2x4s at the wall, instead of going through, they measured the distance through the wall. They bounced off the panel and came flying back and like their lives in cameras. Oh, those are the high. That was a test. Yes, and that was a pass. And then they set your panel up in actually a vacuum chamber where they subject it to lateral wings, and they create a deflection and then they release it. And on a laser, they see what your permanent deflection is. And this came to within 1/1000th of an inch for return. They kind of laughed and said, yeah, a lot of people still pass that. Wood still passes that. But now we're going to do a concentric loading. We're going to just keep bashing you down into your wall panel, regardless of the composition of it. And then we're going to see how far back to zero you get. Came right back to zero again. Wow. And the failure in any one of those 3 test areas is a failure in the entire test. So it was nice to know that you had something that resilient that not only could I could afford to make that in New York, I could make it in Florida, I could make it in Texas, I made it in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. We were all over the place getting local concrete to build it. And then with a good system that Anthony is fairly knowledgeable in, is a radiant heat system. Right. Now,
can you actually pre-cut that into the panel?
I can actually put that into a panel, but most of your heat loss is not through your walls. It's through your ceiling.
Oh, sure. Heat rises.
Exactly. Yeah. However, a lot of your heat gain is through your walls.
Right.
And with the
like for summertime.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you have AC on. You don't want to have that heat come in your room. And that's why low E glass is good too. It's not nearly as bad as when all you do is put your blinds. Right. And it stops the infiltration of solar infiltration. In the winter, when you have really low and flat light, you still get great heat from it. But thermal mass is a very important thing, where a home like this is great for the resistance of thermal change. When you have a concrete or a house with mass, they call it the flywheel concept. Once you heat it up, it stays heated. Right. Once you cool it down, it stays cool.
Like a stone. You heat the
exactly.
stone.
Yeah.
They used to cook the stone.
Put your pizza on it.
Right.
That's where got everything.
Sure.
But that you can reproduce this not only in any state, but you can put it in almost any town, or you can buy that product. So if you want to go buy a set of trusses, I go to Curtis. Do they have their own company that makes them? If I go to somebody like Stock, used to be Velvet, that was a family-owned company locally. They made their own trusses. One of the few people around that actually did that. Right. So you are sustaining it. However, they're still buying the wood from warehouses. Sure. Right. That's still coming.
Even though they're fabricating the truss is an imported product.
They're still buying it out of there. Where stone and lime and such, it's all indigenous here.
Sure.
And you can get it here. I always said that if you had a way of loading a barge with good, clean sand, throwing it on the Hudson, taking it to New York, you'd be a millionaire within weeks. Because they just can't get good sand.
Really?
Yeah, they can't get it.
We have more than we need.
It's unbelievable. And this is where the glaciers melted. Exactly. And that's why our soil is all glacial till. Tremendous for actually building conditions. When the exception, we get a little bit more to the south and a little bit more to the west, which the mountains you see are not mountains. It's actually an escarpment. It's the shore for the sediment.
Well, this was a big lake bed at one time, right?
Huge.
Which is why the sand is here.
Huge.
Yeah, you all settled out, and
everything's becoming something else under pressure and temperature. Clay is on the way to becoming slate. Slate's on the way to becoming marble. Marble's on its way to under heat and pressure, changing itself under eons of years. Right. But of course, many of the processes have stopped in the areas that we live in. We have ample soil materials for indigenous.
Well, that's the excitement on the construction angle, and going back to the sustainability. Not just here, but everywhere we do building, as a people, we should incorporate or integrate local materials when is at all possible. And that's the way humans used to do things. We used to use indigenous materials. I mean, you can look at the way you look at the Aboriginals, and yes, there were primitive housing, but it was all indigenous material housing.
Yeah.
And we may look and scoff at that and say, I'm not going to live in a longhouse or a.
Well, they always didn't have
One of
a
those teepees.
good method of moving around either.
Right.
So they had to forage what they could for materials. And in today's technology, you can go all over the world.
Well, sure, we have the global shipping, the global.
Yeah.
But even still, though, we have to think about the future and cost and everything else. So it still makes sense and we have plenty of great materials here to just draw from.
Yep.
And from the woods to the. It's ironic that we have to go to Weyerhaeuser from the Pacific Northwest for lumber to make a truss, when we have Northeast white pine that is totally suitable for the same thing.
And this was the white pine capital of the world.